Well, recently I went to the Wigtown Book Festival in Scotland, and my intention was to draw all week, but I ended up spending a lot of time making a mural at the school. You can go and have a look at that here. So the book festival means that lots of people come, lots of authors come and they talk about their things, and I would sit and listen to the author and I would kind of draw them and draw stuff based on the book that they were talking about. And this was Alistair McIntosh, who wrote a book called Poacher's Pilgrimage, about walking through the islands, eating mussels, reflecting on this and that. And this was him. He was looking for these magic wells and things like that. He's a very spiritual kind of person. He's actively engaging with the roots of war, speaking at military establishments. So he goes to military establishments and talks about peace, which is interesting. And then we had Jane Dawson talking about John Knox, who was a religious leader who was always thought of as a bit dour, and she made him sound a bit more exciting. And I did a picture of him here, as if he's photobombing in a selfie or something, but as a statue, so statue bombing. So she made him sound much more exciting person than he usually comes across as. This is the illustrator Benji Davis. I saw him eating lobster in the artist's and author's room, and I just sat and quickly sketched him eating that. Now this was the lovely Hugh Williams from the BBC, who was talking about her fight with breast cancer, and she's talking to Polly. And she's such a professional kind of interviewer that she ended up really interviewing herself. And we were in the tent, and the wind was shaking and everything, and the kind of the signs at the back kept falling down in the wind, and so she sort of grabbed hold of it and was making some joke about it being an emergency. And so that's Hugh Williams flying off into the air. Somebody had an idea. Rachel rather had an idea to have a tea club where people could just come and have a cup of tea and talk to each other. So I went along to see about that, and these are people coming and talking to each other. And there was this little girl came along with her mother, and who had a pushchair. And while she was sorting the baby out of the pushchair, Clementine escaped, just ran for it. This is Eleanor Rosamond Barraclough, who came to talk about Beyond the Northlands. She gave a fantastic talk about the Vikings. It was great fun. She kind of really was there for the Vikings. And then this was the evening, Saturday evening, at the Wigtown's Got Talent competition. And this is Hardeep Singh Kohli, who I was sharing the house with, and he was the lady has a talent for colour coordination. Wigtown's Got Talent, and Kegi Carew. There we are. So this is Wigtown's Got Talent 2016. This is the wonderful Debbie Gliori, children's author and illustrator, and she was playing her fiddle, a song called Naked and Bare in Shetland. And this is people calling themselves the Lost Memories. And the lady had lost her voice as well, which didn't really help with the song too much. The Mad Hatters, they came dressed up and sang Three Little Girls. Nicholas Lloyd gave us a kind of a poetic performance, which is really quite sad, really. Easy Reed, he comes and plays his harmonica and sings great blues stuff. Charles McEwan and his imaginary friend, or he didn't really have an imaginary friend, but it looked like he had an imaginary friend, playing his guitar. And this is a guy called Chick, who said, "What kind of poems do you like, Chick?" And chopping wood. These are the girls who won last year, Sky and Erin, and they were dancing again. Nicholas Lloyd won the competition. Last year he was juggling penguins, and he didn't need the penguins this year, but this year he won the golden pencil. This is Kelly and Jamie dancing Birds of a Feather. And here again is Kegi Carew once more, eating, might have been lobster, but I didn't paint whatever it was. And this was a session with a lady called Rebecca Asher. She was talking about the trouble with boys. It was called Man Up. She's sending signals to our children just to look, just to touch. The brain is a plastic thing. And I started drawing her, and I realised I hadn't got my paints with me, and all I had was a grey felt tip pen. And then right at the end of the session, I found I had got my paints with me after all. I was sitting on them. And this was a little lad I saw in the audience, who's very funny, so I just had to draw him. This is in the festival restaurant in the county buildings. I just had to draw this little lad who was eating his sandwich, a couple behind there. Now, this is Susan Kalman, who gave a great talk about her fight with depression. How everybody tells her just to cheer up, love, but always behind her there's the crab of hate. It was a very funny but very moving session. And then we had the up night. People came to tell stories about things that had gone wrong. So this is Robert Trigger saying, so there I was in a canoe and Steve's thumb flew through the air. And there it was in a puddle, and what they did with the thumb. And this is Claudia Montero, who told us a story about how she lost 50,000 euros that involved love. Well, it wasn't true love, was it? There we are. And this was Annie, I didn't catch her second name. She said as an associate editor, she passed on a New York Times bestseller. Oh, I think many editors have probably done that. This is Bill Coles, who was talking about how awful he was, but his son is even worse. So, because he was being so awful one day, his father had said to him, I hope your son is even 10 times as worse as you. And this was David Smith, who told us he was carrying this book. Says, I carry a book in which I wrote down the lessons that I learned. And he was a TV producer, and all sorts of things went wrong, and he ended up owing a lot of money, making too many assumptions. And this was at the Book of Bedtime. I didn't have time to paint it because it's such a short little session. And this is Siobhan with her teddy bears and a cup of cocoa. So you go to the Book at Bedtime and people tell you stories, and you get a teddy bear to hug and you get a cup of cocoa. And I did it one night. I went and sang a lullaby, and anyway. This was Christopher McGrath talking about Mr. Darley's Arabian and how there's 95% of all thoroughbreds come from one bloodline. It's like they invented the watermark before the banknote. I thought that was an interesting idea. This is the audience listening to him. And my imagined race, imagine all these racehorses zooming behind him. This is the wonderful Viv French, his children's author. And this is Louise Grey, who says, I killed this quiche with my bare hands. She'd written a book called The Ethical Carnivore. She would only eat meat if she'd killed it herself and butchered it and done everything to it. So I turned her into the ethical vegetarian. This is quiz night. Stuart Kelley's quiz night in the pub. This is Asma Mir, who's on the radio on Saturday mornings on BBC Radio 4. And they were desperately trying to win the competition, but they didn't. And my team, we came second, mostly thanks to my daughter, who reads a lot of books and knows a lot of stuff. And this is the wonderful Bookshop Band. We were out in the wilds in a bird hide, and the light was fading dramatically. So half of this is painted in the dark. They were doing their thing where they kind of read a book and they write a song about it, and then they kind of talk about the book and sing the song. And actually I'll put a link here to the Bookshop Band. Go and have a look, they're fantastic. And this was a wonderful talk by Matt Merritt called A Sky Full of Birds, and he's written a book about going around the country, seeing all these great conglomerations of birds, so like starlings and gannets and things like that. And this is Polly Puller, who's also a great naturalist, who was talking to him, and they're discussing murmurations. This was the most tweeted picture of them all that I did, I think. And then this was the Midge, where people came and told stories. It's meant to be based on the moth. And people came and told confessional stories. This is Marjorie Lofty-Gill said, don't tell my dad I told you. I'm not sure who this is, I can't remember. It said he can now wear his hoodie. This lady said she was on the set of Gladiator. She found herself there. And this is Renita Boyles talking about there's a bear in my cabin, and I'm ashamed to say I've forgotten the lady's name. She said she was a jellyfish murderer. See, I didn't get everybody's names and write them down. I killed Miss Lax with a voodoo doll. That was a very funny story. She killed Miss Lax in her school. Now, this was a thinking breakfast, which I really like the idea of that. You go along and you get a croissant and a cup of coffee. And this was Julian Baggini, who was talking about food and the philosophy of food and things. And he said Socrates would rather grab a quick sandwich and debate. And I was writing down lots of things that he was thinking about. Is gluttony a bad word for just seeking pleasure? Killing a human involves consequential loss. Killing is not a welfare issue. Do we still have to kill and eat meat if we don't have to? It's all sort of so much stuff going on there. It was a really good breakfast. I really enjoyed that. Oh, that's the end of the book. But I had a backup book, so that's okay. This is another breakfast with Derek Jones, who's kind of an architect, but he's a real kind of philosopher and thinker as well. And it was, my brain was completely, there was so much going on in this talk. I don't know where to begin. Maybe the world of ideas is more important than reality. Bias allows us to sort out information quickly. Parallel processing, social conformity is a form of gravity. There were so many ideas. And in fact, at lunchtime, I went and sat down with Derek and we had a very long conversation and generally put the world to rights. But you got space is created in your head, not in reality. Reality, ontology. What we see is not the same as what we think. Knowledge, epistemology. Thinking does not happen in a French philosopher's head while lying in bed. Yeah. And then I went to see Hugh Williams, who was talking about the tides, and I just started drawing this when he said, can we close all the curtains? I was plunged into darkness. So, so that's sort of painted in pretty much darkness there. I went to see Joyce Cochrane, who runs the Bank Bookshop, and she had been carrying too many books and done her back in. So this is what the love of books will do to you. Somebody gone and covered it all in these flowers and stuff like that for her to make it a bit more fun. And that is it. This was a week later or something at Waterstones in Cardiff. This is John and Geordie Blake with the Firefly. We had a Firefly Press morning where all us Firefly authors were telling stories. This is Louise Williams doing I think I'm an actress, darling. And this is Sharon Marie Jones telling her stories of magic, bubble and boil, stir it all up, brew me a magical hiccup.